Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks a lot for joining us for today's webinar. And welcome to the third episode of the EU ASEAN thematic webinar organized as part of the Smart Green ASEAN Cities Programme. If you are not familiar yet, SGAC is an initiative funded by the European Union, supported by the ASEAN Secretariat and implemented by UNCDF, UN Capital Development Fund, in partnership with FMDB, which stands for the Global Fund for Cities Development. The program has been designed as a catalytic initiative to support the financing of sustainable urbanization across ASEAN member states, especially in middleweight cities, to develop viable financing mechanisms for smart green city projects. It adopts a multi-level collaboration approach, working together with the ASEAN Secretariat and national and subnational governments, and there are currently 15 cities participating in the program. Through this webinar series, we hope to offer you opportunities to explore a wider spectrum of innovative approaches, as well as to connect with like-minded peers and practitioners, and lastly, to learn and possibly adapt some best practices. If you were with us for the first webinar, you would have seen that more than 80 participants from 37 cities across 11 countries attended that session on waste management. And we had speakers from Parma in Italy, Ljubljana in Slovenia, representatives from Laos, as well as experts from GIZ and GRET. Our second webinar was held where we had speakers from Samar Island in the Philippines, speakers from Copenhagen in Denmark, representatives from Espelia, as well as the Asian Development Bank, and we had more than 120 participants from 57 cities across 22 countries. So just to remind you and to let you know that the recording of the past webinars and this one will also be available through our platform, Pakuru, and the recording will be made available in 5 languages: English, Thai, Indonesian, Lao, and Khmer. So moving on for today's webinar, the focus is on smart mobility. We might be wondering why smart mobility is so important, especially in this region. So just to give you some statistics, and despite the fact that about 25% of Asia's rural population lacking access to road networks, 25% of urban residents lacking efficient access to urban public transit, and still over the last decade, Asia has witnessed a faster growth in emissions within the transport sector than any other industry. In 2018, this sector accounted for 13% of total direct CO2 emissions from fuel combustion in Asian economies, 3.9% with a 3.9% representing more than double the global rate of increase. So this means that decarbonizing the growing transport sector in Asia becomes crucial whilst the expanding infrastructure and increased passenger and freight activity continues. However, transitioning to sustainable urban mobility requires upfront and long-term funding. The benefits of sustainable mobility, such as improved livability and positive health impacts, are not considered in cost-benefit estimates since they are often hard to monetize. While the public sector often has a limited financing capacity, private investors are often reluctant to invest in sustainable transport and mobility projects as they consider the provision of urban mobility a public service and thus do not expect high financial returns. Now, given this information, and before we move on to the next part of our webinar, we would like to get your opinion on the biggest challenges for cities to fund and finance smart and green mobility transitions. So we're going to launch a poll now, and we'd like to ask for your opinion. There are no right or wrong answers. It's just one response that you think is the most appropriate. So we have our responses. Thanks everyone for voting. It's interesting to note that based on the two webinars we had previously, on waste management and wastewater, both issues have similar predominant challenges on inadequate budget allocation. So in today's poll, most respondents also indicated that inadequate budget allocation seems to be the biggest challenge. And so issues and challenges. And moving on to identify the challenges and innovative solutions from cities. We have today an exciting lineup of speakers representing 2 cities from the European Union and ASEAN. And these cities have developed effective approaches to financing their smart and sustainable mobility projects. Following the presentations, sectoral experts will provide broader perspectives and highlight the best practices and enabling conditions that could be replicated, or where you can take inspiration from in the different geographies and different cities. So I'm now going to introduce the speakers. We first have apologies if I'm mispronouncing your names. We first have Mr. Michael Glotz Richter, Senior Project Manager for Sustainable Mobility at the Free Hanseatic City of Bremen, Germany. We also have with us today Mr. Abdul Afiq bin Muhammad, a Town Planning Officer from Ipoh City in Malaysia. Finally, we have Professor Sam Chow, Arab Fellow, Director, East Asia Transport Portfolio Leader from Arab. So I hope that this webinar is going to be interesting for all of us. I hope that all participants leave the webinar at the end thinking about new opportunities to create green and smart mobility projects, and also thinking about interesting, innovative funding and financing options that go beyond the public budget and the classic debt financing options. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Michael from the city of Bremen, who is a Senior Project Manager for Sustainable Mobility, to give his presentation. Just a brief bio about Michael. He is a member of the expert group on urban mobility of the European Commission, otherwise known as EGUM. Michael also chairs the working group on sustainable urban space. In Bremen, he has been leading internationally recognized pilot projects in the field of sustainable mobility, ranging from walking and cycling. He worked on Germany's first bicycle zone, covering an entire neighborhood. He's also working on vehicle technologies and automation, as well as sharing, and Bremen's integration of shared mobility in urban renewal and new developments that has achieved some worldwide recognition. So, Michael, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation and for the nice introduction. I would like to take you now to Europe, to be more precise, to the north of Germany, to the city of Bremen. And you see that that's wrong. But I get on the next slide here. Okay, yeah, now it works. Bremen is a city in the north of Germany, a harbor city with about 575,000 inhabitants. And as you can see, we are also cultural heritage. We have pedestrianized the inner city, and we are a tram city, so with streetcars or trams. That's the backbone of our public transport system. But even more important is that Bremen is a cycling city and a walking city. So we have about half of all trips of our citizens done by walking and cycling. And in many cities, walking as a mode of transport is not taken seriously. I think that's the first message. A lot of trips are done by walking, and we have to integrate it because it's very space efficient. We have, besides money, which is always a limited resource, we have space as a limited resource. Street space is limited, and we have to see where we set our priorities. When we look to our inner city neighborhoods, we can see that even almost 60% of the trips are done by walking and cycling. So that's a huge share, and it explains also that comparatively low numbers of public transport. And you can see that in the inner city areas, neighborhoods, people are using the car for 25% of their trips. So we have to see walking, and that's the first message, is the most underestimated mode of transport. And we have also to accommodate good infrastructure for that. So when we look at some streets, how they look like, and the functions, we have transport functions, of course. And we have things like the street cafe, so communication, business, we have social interaction. We have to provide space for storing various vehicles, and that's not only the car, it's also the bicycle, because in a cycling city, you have to provide bike parking as well. You can see there's public transport with a bus in the background, and we have all the ecological functions. So the question of blue and green plants, how to deal with water management and so on, that's all also demanding some space. So that's all the things which are competing. And additionally, we have things like art, people live there, and so on. Public transport in our area is subsidized. That's another message. And it's organized in a way that you have one ticketing system, one information system in the entire region. Not only the city, but the entire wider region is using one system. It's you can see it's an app. We had or still have the smart card. It's now all going to smartphone use. We are looking to have inclusive public transport that's also available when you're in a wheelchair. And like here, the photo on the top right, it's in front of our central station. There we have more than 100,000 people every day changing between regional rail services, local buses, trams, regional buses, to the bikes, and all the various modes. So it all comes together, and we have to look into the region as well. Yeah, and again, when talking about public transport, 94% of the people use walking to get to the stop, and from the stop to their final destination. So the quality, how we arrange bus stops, tram stops, or in other cases, metro stops, is part of the quality of the network. So also another message, look at the quality of the walkways from and to the stops of public transport. So walking is part of the public transport travel chains. So mobility starts at home. That's it starts in your brain, but it starts also with the conditions that you have in your neighborhood. And here you see the big challenge that we have. We have very narrow streets and simply too many cars. So we had to reorganize street space and to organize that the rules are kept. So that means parking at the curb and not on the curb, which is always a fight. Car parking is very emotional for many people and politically sensitive. So we have now organized in this one neighborhood in a project that all the sidewalks are free from parking, and we have fewer cars, which is a big fight as well. We have also to see that narrow streets have to function. So the waste collectors, they are our biggest fans for reorganizing the street space. The same applies, of course, for firefighters. It's simply clear that they have to get through whatever comes. And also, we are an aging population, so we have more people using these walker frames. We call it rollator, and they need to be accompanied side by side. So there is no space to leave cars half on sidewalks. Yeah, and also the bicycles. We have to provide in these historic neighborhoods where there's no bike parking in the houses, safe bike parking on street. And here you can see how we did it to use the street space on the lane to provide safe bike parking. Yeah, and then the bicycle as an important mode needs to connect neighborhoods. So good and safe infrastructure for cycling is important, also to consider them at traffic lights in a fair way. And here a picture before and after, so to have direct connections. And the good thing in our city is that almost every car driver is also a cyclist. So everyone is using bicycles. So there we can do more on sharing the street space. In other cities, you would probably need to separate much more cycling and the car for safety reasons. We are providing a kind of bicycle highway network in the city and into the region as well to provide fast and safe connections for cycling. And here you can see that we reorganize street space, that we take it from car lanes and give it to cycling. This requires political courage and also good communications, that people understand that it's for the benefit of the city when we have more people cycling, that this is an active contribution to reduce congestion. It's also an active contribution to health, yeah, to keep people healthy. Of course, we have a little bit different climate conditions than many other cities in the world, but it's important to take this seriously. Here you can see how it works. So it's there. This is one of our cycle highway connections. And even we reorganized it on some flyovers so that you can cycle over the intersections instead of waiting at traffic lights. If you want to, you can still go on the level, but here you can see that there the car lane was converted into a bike lane. So it was a 2-lane car flyover, and now it's a shortcut for cyclists. Yeah, we talked now very briefly about alternatives to using a car, but that doesn't answer the question, what do we do with the parked cars? And that's the second message. If you're looking to an efficient city as a core element of being a smart city, you have to give also alternatives to owning a car, and that's very crucial. And how do we do that? For reclaiming street space, we support car sharing as alternative to car ownership. This has started in Bremen in 1990, so more than 30 years ago, but now is a high-tech option. So you do your reservation usually on your smartphone app, but still you can do it online. And for people can still call, also the call center. We have many car sharing stations, and you have the access electronically, and then you drive and return the car after use to the station. Important, 80% of our car sharing users do not have a car. So this is really replacing the first car in the household. And every car sharing car in Bremen takes 16 cars off the road. That's the result of the studies. So what's important from the viewpoint of a user, and I think whatever we talk about, we have to understand the real needs of users. And we see here what's very important, the availability of a car when required. So the reliability of the system is very important, and that's related to the station-based system. Then that you have the stations nearby. It's not so important to have these intermodal stations. And even less important is to have fancy cars. So people are very pragmatic about it. And these are the key points: easy procedures, reliability, proximity. And when we compare it with the satisfaction level, then we see that people are really happy. More than 80, sometimes 90% satisfaction level is really very good. So the service is working pretty well. And this is also mirrored in the number of users. Once again, Bremen, 500,000 inhabitants. We have more than 30,000 users in the system, 150 stations, 600 cars, and it's growing every year by 15 to 18%. So this is really good. And we are quite happy with that. It's a private operator. It's not subsidized, but we provide the space for the stations. And we would have 8,000 cars more on Bremen's roads. And if we want to achieve the same relief with garages, parking garages, this would be an investment of 150 to 200 million euro, equivalent to more than 200 million US dollars. So just to give you a feeling, and we as a city invested something between 1 and 2 million. So a return of investment with a factor more than 100, that's what you can achieve, because street space is extremely valuable and is limited in all the cities. I've been to many Asian cities and I know how dense it is, the amount of traffic, and you cannot do it with private car ownership. It's simply physically impossible. And I think that's the reason why we have to think about in a smart city that we provide much more alternatives to using a car. So what we're doing is really to provide that kind of stations where people can pick up and return the cars. It's a transition now to electric cars. In the moment, it's a mixed fleet to keep the threshold low for new users who are not yet used to electric vehicles. And all these stations are on street. And we have, the operator also has a free-floating fleet added in with the same tariffs as it's for the station-based. So it's not so much for inner city travel. It's much more used because it's open-end booking. But you don't know whether you have the same parking spot. Last point is new developments. We are going away from asking the developers to provide all the car parking. It's impossible. And if we are able to reduce car parking, we have more affordable housing. Underground parking is extremely expensive and makes 15 to 20% of construction costs, just for housing the cars, not yet talking about the cost of owning a car. So if we were able to combine housing with mobility services, we are, first of all, saving money, and we are giving incentives for sustainable mobility patterns. That's quite important. Here you can see it. It's car sharing. It's also bike sharing, so that people have all the options, and it's close to public transport. So that's what we want to combine in the overall development. Mobility is very emotional. And so our promotion for car sharing is not about saving money. It's not about the environment. It's simply that it's extremely convenient when you don't have to take care for a car. So that's Udo, our comic hero, and he prefers to chill than rather taking care for a car because he's a smart car sharing user. Yes, and so the lessons learned are we all have a street space dilemma. All cities in the world have limited street space, and it's a big fight. And we need space for all the functions, including dealing with rainwater management, heating, and so on. We have to talk walking, cycling, and public transport as core elements. Never forget about talking about walking. And car sharing is a trendy alternative to car ownership in Bremen. And the benefits is really when you reduce the demand for parking, because space is valuable, and this is, you can put it into dollars, you can put it into rupiah, all the currencies. Look at the space that otherwise is used and wasted. So these were the messages from Bremen. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the later discussion and also the other contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was very interesting. I like when you say that mobility starts at home and starts in the mind. I think it's very true. And we have to adapt the right mindset in order for the city to be successful in these kind of innovative mobility solutions. So thanks a lot once again for your interesting presentation. We're going to shift now to the ASEAN region, and we're happy to invite and welcome Mr. Abdul Afiq bin Muhammad, Town Planning Officer from Ipoh City in Malaysia. And As the Town Planning Officer at Ipoh City Council, Mr. Abdul has 7 years of experience in city planning. Ipoh City plans to expand its private-public partnership on the smart traffic system that was launched in 2022. And this system utilizes artificial intelligence for traffic lights and aims to reduce congestion and improve the traffic flow in the city of Ipoh. So, Mr. Abdul, the floor is now yours. We look forward to your presentation.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, thank you, moderator. And thank you, Michael, for a very interesting presentation. A bit different from mine because we are managing the car. In Germany, you guys already manage the people walking because in ASEAN countries, electric car are not so comprehensive use, and we still use a petrol car. Okay. Thank you. Assalamualaikum. And so my first slide. Okay. Greeting to all participants. And before I present my sharing session regarding one of our main project of Ipoh Smart City, which is smart traffic, I would like to give an overview on where is Ipoh is located in Malaysia. Actually, Ipoh is the city in the state of Perak in Malaysia, approximately around 250 kilometers from our capital, Kuala Lumpur, situated in the northern region, and around 643 square kilometers, and we have population on 800,000. And before I present, before I present how we implement our one of our public-private partnership project, I want to give a clear picture to everyone about our smart traffic in Ipoh. So I will divide my presentation on first, I will tell you all about our smart traffic, and second, how we manage to do it in our private partnership. For now, we are in the process of expand our smart traffic 2.0 to another road that we has identified for the road, and a little quick snapshot regarding our smart traffic analytic and recognition system, or we have branded it into STARS. STARS mean smart traffic recognition system. So we have chosen the main road in the city of Ipoh and have identified some challenge such as our traffic congestion that lead to our air pollution and carbon emission from the slow moving car because of the traffic, and the use of conventional traffic light lead to longer services restoration and inability to us to adapt the pattern of traffic. And also the main road uses in that the data. This is important for urban planning in us to planning our traffic management. So this smart solution, smart traffic technology has delivered to solve this problem as simple as, first, we want to reduce the traffic congestion. Second, reducing the carbon emission by reducing the traveling time from junction 1 to junction 4. And I will explain that on the next slide. Third is the most important, is what people call now, data is the new goal. And the system provide us the perfect traffic, the data and pattern. And fourth, of course, also important, the quality of life of the people to safeguard the community. Okay, next slide, please. So actually, little quick snapshot about our after 2 years, the outcome that after we implementing the smart traffic, and from junction 1, we always take around 120 seconds. After we implement that our smart traffic, we managed to reduce the travel time into 60 seconds more or less. And it seems maybe the effect is minimal, but I will explain later that the saving of 60 seconds of the travel time will have a large effect. Second, after implement, the carbon emission from 500 kilo daily, we have reduced into half, almost 250 kilo carbon daily by the system. And third, like I say before, data is the new goal. We managed to get a fairly accurate data, and the operation efficiency, we managed to save the 60 seconds of the people time in Ipoh. Okay, next. So this is our aim for the next project, to expand the Smart Traffic 2.0, which we intend with the help of Smart Green ASEAN City to further expand this project and to make the smart traffic continuity. Okay, next slide. Okay, this our new discovery that is quite interesting. Earlier, I explained that although the impact of the 60 seconds is quite small, but from the discovery, we just got that almost 32 million per year vehicle that pass on this road for an average, take 1 hour vehicle. For average, it takes 0.75 liter petrol. And this system managed to save almost 500,000 of liter of oil consumption. That is equivalent to the almost 1 ringgit Malaysia, around 200 US dollar. And actually it's based on the price of petrol in each country. The more expensive the country, the more saving that can be made. So can we all imagine that this is the 60-second reduction of the travel time? And what if the reduction exceed 60 seconds? So this is our new discovery. So next. So can someone from Ipoh, Amir, pasang live feed? I will show you the live of the smart traffic. Share the screen. Hold on. Can moderator let one of from IOC Ipoh to share the screen? So this is an example for the dashboard of the command center. We control from the command center that the system will create the analytical data, such as the car counting and the classification of the car, the average journey of the time, and the traffic flow and the green wave, and also the traffic incidents. And the system also calculate the carbon emission for 24 hours a daily basis. Can you open the camera? So this is example of the display on our command center this is live from our busiest street in city of Ipoh, and this place in our command center. So we can manage the traffic very well. We get the data, and we able to reduce from 120 seconds from junction 1 until junction 4 into 60 seconds. So, okay, come back to my slide. So next. So here we come. What we call a public-private partnership is the form of collaboration between the public sector and the private sector. And in this project, actually we collaborate and choose one of biggest smart solution company and well established in Malaysia, and the main internet provider in Malaysia. So we found that there are 6 advantages on public-private partnership. The first, from the government part, actually it will increase the government financial resources and diversify the access to financial resources and capital without we to increasing our debt. Second, it's also provide benefit to the government management, such as it will increase the transparency, the cost planning, and the long-term implementation, and also the risk balance and got share between the government and the company in implementing, managing, and mitigating the risk. And we also paying for the services provided without requiring high investment. And we also can build the capacity of the government through the benefit of the expertise and the technology transfer. And finally, the efficiency will increase and it will speed up the delivery to deliver to our community. So that's what we get from our public-private partnership (PPP) from TM and us from the government. Next slide, please. Now, how we implement this project, actually with the concept of public-private partnership. First, we in Ipoh as City Council has agreed to TM1 as strategic partner for our smart city, and both parties has signed an MOU collaboration. And after that, we and that company TM1 have implement POC, the proof of concept, with no cost for 8 months. And after that, we find the system is really help us, and we agreed to subscribe from them. But we made it monthly payment for the 5-year contract. And this approach actually allow us for the deployment of this smart traffic without incurring high upfront. So after 5 years, maybe we got the question, after 5 years, what will happen? As we all know, the technology move fast. So after 5 years, this smart traffic will be ours, and maybe it will review back based on the technology that time. Okay, next. So this is example of our 5-year contract, but I can disclose the price, but you can see this is the method that used in the 60-month contract. And next. Okay, this is the milestone for the 5-year contract, and this include the government tax imposed. Okay, and next, I think last slide. So this is the last slide. Our journey in implementing the project. We meet with TM in 2020. After that, COVID happened, and we start negotiate with them in June 2002. And this project was officially launched by Mayor. And after all, we want to expand this project we help with SGAC for the second smart traffic, perhaps. So I think that's all. Thank you for your attention. If you have anything question, you can contact me through the program secretariat. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul Afiq, for that presentation on Ipoh City. We're going to move on to another presentation from our sector expert, but just before that, we're going to have a second poll for the webinar, and my colleague is going to launch the poll soon. And just to let you know, you may choose multiple answers for this poll. So there you should have it pop up on the screen. You can take a few moments just to respond. Thank you. Excellent. I think we have the results now. So the question was, which approaches do you believe hold the greatest potential for financing smart and green mobility projects in the ASEAN region? And 95% of the respondents chose blended finance approaches, including PPP, which is interesting considering we just heard about the PPP from IPO. So it seems like blended finance approaches holds the greatest potential. The applicability of specific financing options critically depends on many factors, including the national legislative environment. However, since public budgets are limited, we do indeed need to combine all different funding and financing options and resources, including government transfers, grants, PPPs, local revenue and project-related revenues such as public transport fares and the lease of advertising space buses, including the extension of local tax base, such as road user charges, parking fees, and also the use of value capture mechanisms. So thank you everyone for participating in the poll. We now move on to hear from our sectoral expert, Professor Sam Chow, Arab Fellow, Director of the East Asia Portfolio Leader from Arab. Professor Chow, the floor is yours. Sorry, just a brief bio on Professor Chow. Sorry. Professor Sam Chow has more than 36 years of experience of professional consulting and management experience in transportation planning and engineering in 17 countries in the Asia Pacific, South Asia, and Africa region. He's also the transport portfolio lead in rail, aviation, highways, and maritime in East Asia for Arab. Arab is a global firm internationally recognized for the services it provides in engineering, design, and consulting. Now, Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction of myself. Let me share the screen. Okay, I suppose you can see that. Right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Professor.
Yeah, okay. So is it in presentation mode now?
Not yet in the presentation.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, now we could not see it there. Could you reshare the slides, please? Or maybe we can help to share the screen.
Yeah, you can see that now?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. Okay. So today I want to give an example of a case study that we have worked in Da Nang, Vietnam. Is about not just leveraging private sector finance for smart mobility, but it's the case studies on what we have done for World Bank in last couple of years. About the two level of projects. One level is to formulate a national roadmap of e-mobility for the country Vietnam. And then second is implementation level. We select the city to do a implementation strategies to see how to implement the e-mobility. So as you see, smart mobility, in fact, cover quite a large range of things, and e-mobility is one of those, and it's very important because it's not just the energy source of the vehicle, but with the e-car, with the software, and then it will become a very important element in the e-mobility ecosystem. We're talking about V2V, V2X, all this communication, and then it's also talking about even not just charging, but reverse direction of charging from the e-vehicles back to the grid. So there's lots of things could happen with this one element of the smart mobility. Okay, talking about private and public funding, so you can see that in fact, most of the funding, a lot in the transport sectors are from government, either is from the city, state government, or in the capital budgets, or some grants from the central government, or some in the city level. The city may have some long-term municipal bonds or bonds issued by urban infrastructure funds, and then bank and institutional loans or private sector investments. So private sector investment is one of those. Of course, they are in different objectives. For the government, to make it viability, to decide to invest in an infrastructure or in solution, mobility solution, it has to be supported by a broader plan, like economic growth or growth of a city, urbanization, something like that, or to, in some cases, increase the employment, or to make sure the city or the government or the country is in the front runner of a kind of technology. And for private sector, of course, the project investment has to be a bankable scheme. That means they have to looking for acceptable returns. They have to make sure that the risk is minimized and that the reward is in line with the risk. And then for the government, how to make a mobility solution viable, the most important is to reduce the CapEx upfront. So that means if they can find some solutions, is to transfer the cost burden to third party. Usually that is the investors. So maybe in some cases, some concessionary period, so that there's some income or some subsidies, but a lot of the investment made by the private sector. So to reduce the CapEx. And then for the ongoing one, then they have to see how to attract more people, more users using the kind of mobility. So enhance the number of users lead to revenue increase and also share the unit cost as well. And then they have to think other things, try to put on some additional revenue streams. This is something they have to think how to develop a long-term revenue stream to help to fund the debt repayment. This is very generic, but it applies to almost everything. And in this case, this is the e-mobility solution for Tainan. So first of all, we just briefly talk about the e-mobility national roadmap for Vietnam. Of course, for a country, they consider more than just things about a city. The first of all is to make sure the industry for the future, which in this case, in Vietnam, they want to position the country to be a regional leader in the electric vehicle manufacturing, the batteries, the grid digitalization, vehicle to grid integration, etc. So this is all new technology, and and also can create a lot of employment. And second is about a lot of country, especially in ASEAN country, about the decarbonization, because they have in the COP26 a commitment on the carbon neutrality objectives by 2050. This is the country's commitment in the United Nations back in 2016. So in order to change the energy usage for the car, of course, e-mobility is one of the contributor to this COP26 carbon neutrality or decarbonization commitment. So this is to create synergy between energy and transport sectors in this decarbonization process. And then, of course, the other thing is a lot of these fuels has to be imported, and then try to decouple the transport development from dependency on the import fuels. Even they need import fuels, they may be used for other use, but for transportation now with the e-mobility, depends on how they generate the electricities. Of course, there could be other means that maybe solar, maybe wind farm or hydro. This all can no need to rely on the import fuels. And if you are still using the internal combustion engine, then you have no choice because the hydro, the wind farm, the solar cannot use that kind of energy to your ICE car. But if you are an electric car, then this a new energy source can be used to generate electricity for the e-vehicles. And then this is the Dainan's e-mobility aspiration. And then something that I wanted to focus today, because there are many things like in the recommendation of Dainan, there's EV take-up, there's charging infrastructure, and also about the power generation, the grid and renewable energy integration. But I just want to focus today in how to use the PPP or the private sector participation in the charging infrastructure. So you can see that for charging infrastructure, in fact, for different vehicles, there are different duty cycle and also different methodology of charging. And then the duration of the charging is also a matter. So you can see that for buses, you may want to, because of the operation needs, you may have more rapid or opportunity charging, like the pantograph or the ultra rapid charging point. But for private car, in fact, you don't really travel a lot today, and with this today's technology, once you fully charge, you may can run 400-500 kilometers without any problem. So this is something that you can use a slower one. You can use home or overnight charging point. That is something but that means you have to park in a longer time, or maybe in your own places. And then for the commercial of goods vehicles, there's something in between. And there's also another technology for smaller vehicles that is talking about battery swapping. So this is, you can see that the different kinds of charging methods, it occupies not just the equipment itself, but also the space for the parking itself. And then all these need to be invested. And because of the convenience, you cannot put it everywhere, because at the very beginning, the number of users is far less than the charging station. But you have to strike a balance. If you are too few, you cannot encourage people to buy the e-vehicles, because they find that it's so inconvenient. Maybe they have to, very difficult for them to find a charging point, or maybe they have to queue for a long time for the charging point, and that it will stop us buying e-vehicles. So something that they meet, in this case, they can have the private sector to come in and help. So this is the business model in the charging infrastructure, in the deployment strategies for mainly is the charging infrastructure, because there's some because if you charge, you will have revenue, and then there will be something that you can have a business model. And then this to be a synergy of national government, the local government, or the vehicle manufacturers for the vehicle manufacturers, of course, it's talking about the e-vehicle manufacturers. There are several business models the cities that can adopt in this public charge point, because it could be the local government own and operate that is totally 100% funded by the public sector, or the local government own but the private sector operate. That means the private sector can invest and build on this land owned by the government, and then they have a operating period for that. Or in some cases is the other way around, is the private sector commercial operator, but the land is leased by the government. They still get some rent from to the government. So this is a different kind of charging a business model, but depends on the revenue, of course, and in some cases there may be some growing period when the user are not lot, but this is a period that every e-vehicle promotion has to go on. In some cities, they may promote the buying or some incentive in buying e-vehicles. So these are all methods to promote it. But charging is usually one of the considerations for people to decide to buy or not buying an e-vehicle. So in this case, you can see the ecosystem. If the e-vehicle numbers are low, then that means the business is not really a business, because that means they need some subsidies from the government to make it work. When it grows into a larger number of e-vehicles, then there may be a hybrid businesses. And then when the e-vehicles are common use, just like example in Hong Kong, we have already a policy that by 2035, no more internal combustion engine cars will be registered. So that means you cannot buy even you can buy, you cannot run on the road, put this way. So that means by that time, for sure, every car need to have a charging in some stage. So that means it become a commercial business. So there's a different stage that you need different business model. But at the very beginning, this is how, if you can attract the private sector to invest, then it saves lots of the funding from the government on the charging point, on the charging equipment, and then also the operation of the charging point. And then this is some of the comparison for different operation model, and then the responsibility. So you can see that is the first one is everything owned and operated by the government. Of course, this will be very simple, but that means the government has to have a deep pocket. And then the second column or the third column one, either it is the local authority owned, and there is a hybrid. Some land or something will be owned by the public sector, the government, or the local authority. Some is operated by the commercial operator, and some will be a joint effort, like the marketing and charging revenue will be a joint effort, because they have to develop. Or if it's commercially owned, that could be the other extreme, that everything could be owned by the operator, or although in many cases the land ownership could be a shared responsibility, a joint responsibility, because in some cases in a lot of the countries, a lot of charging points are on the public road, on the parking space, the roadside parking space that they have a charging point. Then of course the land is not privately owned. So this is some of the examples of how to promote the e-mobility in a city. And this is my presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Chow, for that presentation. We are now going to have a short sharing of an experience from Mr. Khairil, who will be sharing about Kuantan City Initiative to scale up electric vehicle charging stations infrastructure. So the Kuantan Electric Vehicle Charger Project is unique since it lies in its utilization of the PPP model with the private sector, resulting in no direct expenditure from the public sector. Mr. Khairul, could you share the progress of the project and elaborate how you built the collaboration with the private sector, particularly concerning the funding and financing aspects of the initiative, please? We have just 5 minutes, and we would appreciate it if you could keep to that time allocation, and then we will move on to the Q&A section after this. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you for moderator for your kind gesture. Actually, in Kuantan, I think we couldn't prepare the slide because it's late for me to get the information of this program, but no problem. I will share all the things about our experience in how to, can you hear me? Miss, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So we will share how Kuantan, actually we didn't put a sense on this project. So before this, my mayor, our management, actually I'm a head of project in Kuantan, okay? He asked me to find, to build actually EV charger in Kuantan, I think as early as 2021. So at that time, I think EV charger infrastructure in Malaysia, I think nobody knows. I think in Kuantan, only one place that is, I think, company's chargers, I think BMW, something like that. In Kuantan, there's no facilities for charging the car. So I try to get the supplier, and then I think to sum it up, I think we cannot afford it at that time because the technicality and because also all the risk. Okay, after a few times, there's a company coming back to MP Kuantan. Hi Khairul, do you want to make a business opportunity? I mean Majlis and our company to build a EV charger because they see a opportunity because Majlis Kuantan owns a public parking. We own about, I think, 25,000 public parking in Kuantan. So they are looking into to build a charging station at the public parking. I think that is early as 2022. We are discussing that kind of goals. So I think from there we sit down and we ask request for proposal from them. So they come up with their projection, they come up with all the money, all the things, and then they give us 3 suggestions. First is JV 70-30. I mean, they put the total cost, and then we also participate by putting some money. And then another one is, I think we buy from them directly. And then at that one, they own everything. Okay, so as usual, Majlis, local council don't want any risk at all. So we decide we accept your proposal at the third choice. The third choice is all they fund. They fund and we give some advantage to them. So we put a letter. So I will explain to you how we do it. We give them actually 37 public parking for them to build EV charging infrastructure. Okay, at that time, 2022, we are talking AC, only AC, because direct charge is quite expensive and the rules are not there. I mean, in 2022, as early 2022, the rules are not there. When we want to go, we want to get to the to TNB. I mean, your energy. Malaysian Energy. They cannot comment. Same as Energy Commission. They also cannot comment at that time. But because of we are as a local authority also, local agency also, there's G2G, government to government, it's easy. So until now, Alhamdulillah, we get actually 26 public parking, public EV charging infrastructure in Kuantan. I mean, this is open. You just open platform. You can use plug share and then you can look into it. There's a lot of in Kuantan. But then now the challenges for me is about to provide the direct charge. Okay, the direct charge is quite tricky and costly. Okay, let me share. If you're going for AC charger, it's about maybe 10,000 USD at that time lah. Now maybe cheaper. But if you go for direct charging, it will cost you easily 50,000 USD. I mean, in Malaysia ringgit, it's about 200,000. We are talking about that one. And then there's a lot of problem in terms of, regulation. There's a bureaucratic there. As local agency trying to help, also we sometimes have this obstacle. So I think everybody knows. I think how we want to go. I think if we want to, to get Malaysian agenda EV charging infrastructure to be smooth, everybody must sit down. Maybe we should use one stop center like planning. Everybody very clear how to do EV charger. I think in Malaysia there's a lot of not regulated EV charger now. Okay, so to be honest with you, we actually very. I think me myself is very proud because we don't put any money there. But then in Kuantan there's a public EV charging session. So this is my sharing lah for you. The challenges is there. Everybody knows. But to convince the PPP also is one thing. The government must give and take. Okay, as our initiative, actually we just rent them a public parking space. It's about 440 ringgit Malaysia only per month. Because we want to promote it as for 10 years. Because we want to see whether if this is very profitable, maybe we also join the EV charging provider. That's the goal. But now, okay. So I think my time is there. I hope my explanation is okay for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing the experience in Kuantan, Mr. Khairil. And maybe just one quick question to receive any thoughts or feedback from our experts who had presented earlier. In your experience, when there are issues of legislation, how have you managed to overcome these challenges? Because as we all know, legislation issues are very challenging, take a lot of time to overcome. So maybe Professor Chow or Michael, if you'd like to just quickly share how cities might be able to overcome or convince ministries to, adopt new approaches. It would be great to hear from you.
Well, I think there are many methods in encouraging or promotion of e-vehicle. I can share with you the example in Hong Kong. The government encourage the charging point for private developments. In your car park, if you don't install charging points, the GFA in the car park will be all counted as part of the development GFA. And if you install now 100% charging point, then the basement GFA will not be counted or count, I think 50%. So this and not indirect, it's not in monetary term, but in the investment amount that that means that the developer can save the GFA for other saleable use or than used for car park. This is one of the way to as an incentive to encourage the charging point part. And then on the other hand, for buying a e-vehicle in Hong Kong, because we don't have car manufacturing industry, so the import taxes are very high. But if you buy e-vehicles, then you have quite a big discount on the tax. And then if you're using your older than 10 years internal combustion engine car to swap a e-vehicles, that means there's no increase in total number of car, but that means an increase swapping a internal combustion engine car, which will be scrapped. Then you will have an even bigger incentive. It can save something like 1/3 or 1/4 of the price of a car in Hong Kong. So there's many ways, not just always just the infrastructure, but there's many ways, incentives to encourage the use of e-vehicles. And in the mainland China, after the COVID, I went into mainland China because I had not been there for 3 years, 4 years because of the COVID. And then I found that all the taxis, all the Uber, the online rent car are all e-vehicles. And I'm curious, well, how come it changed so fast? In a few years' time, is almost 100%. And then because one very important thing is the electricity charge at night time, overnight, because they have 2 level of tariff for the electricity charge level. At night time is very cheap. So all the taxi, all the if they do business, they will change to e-vehicle, because for them, if they save a lot of money in the operating cost, the fuel now become electricity, and the nighttime overnight charge is lower. So of course, you don't need the government to force them. They change immediately. And of course, in China also, because they now mass production make a lot of the e-vehicles, and the e-vehicles in some cases are quite cheap, very cheap, maybe $10,000 or $15,000 you can have a car, and then you can do the business. So it become it just changed almost overnight. I mean, very fast. So I think for other countries, there are many methods, from the tax, from the policy, from the building, from the charging infrastructure, from also, I think in a lot of cases in Vietnam, or because Vietnam, they have the car manufacturer, now they go for 100% e-vehicles. Of course, they will try to encourage, maybe they will invest in charging infrastructure as well, try to promote the people to buy, and make sure that if you buy e-vehicles, it's very convenient, it's not difficult. I think I think with the technology, you don't really need to charge a long time. Then just like if 5 minutes charging, just like you go to a gas station, and then if you can run 200-300 kilometers, I think at that time it will be very convenient. And then in some countries, they're talking about changing the gas station, because there will be less and less usage or demand in the gas station. They will change the gas station into fast charging station. So a lot of things could happen, and then I think that needs a lot of opportunities to have the private sector and working with the public sector. I think the public sector can just put in policy, some incentives, and to encourage the private sector to participate.
Mm-hmm. May I add just quickly, one point also, what municipalities, cities can do is to define or let's say low emission zones as a first step to exclude the very high polluting vehicles, and then over time to develop this in the direction of zero emission zones. I mean, we have to see that that we are looking into the future for a certain time period, and that the conditions are different in various cities all over the world. And how can that be done? It's of course always learning what others are doing. That's also one of the meaning here of our exchange, is to see what's going well elsewhere, what are the impacts, and how is it done? How is it accepted politically, in the media, and with the citizens and the business? Then let me say one thing very clearly. Electric vehicles are necessary, but they won't solve our transport problems. The space that's occupied by an electric vehicle is the same, but sometimes even more than of a combustion engine vehicle when the vehicles are bigger and bigger, and also parking space and all that expensive infrastructure is needed if we just change to electric cars. So the idea that we have in our city is to go beyond that and to say, okay, we offer directly alternatives to car ownership. Say, if you are able to do most of your trips by walking, cycling, public transport, then you need a car from time to time. And that's the sustainable city of the future. Then you can use your infrastructure much more efficiently. You are reducing congestion and so on. So we have to see this in a wider picture. Again, no doubts, we have to transform to electric vehicles, but this is not enough. When we look in optimizing traffic flows, again, in the presentation that we saw from Abdul Rafiq Mohammed, there was no consideration about pedestrians, crossings. We'd have in the smart city, we have to take this also into account to see really all transport modes. I don't know the exact number of car ownership in the city of Ipoh, but I can imagine that everyone will be able in the next years and decades to afford a car. And we have to take these groups also into our considerations of mobility plans.
Thank you very much, both Professor Chow and Michael, for your responses and for sharing. And thank you once again, Mr. Khairul, for sharing about Kuantan. And we now have about 10 to 15 minutes for a discussion. And all participants are strongly encouraged to raise questions to our speakers. You may use the Q&A feature in the lower ribbon of your screen, or simply raise your hand, click on the raise your hand button if you wish to ask your question directly. I might start by reading one of the questions that we have collected in the Q&A, and thanks also to our experts who have already started responding to some questions there. I see, Michael, you've been busy responding to the questions. So there's one question for Michael. How do you engage with the private sector to establish car sharing initiatives? In your opinion, what steps can ASEAN cities take to begin implementing this concept? I also maybe have, from my side, just a little add-on to this question. I believe in car sharing initiatives, but with the weather and the climate in Asia, it's difficult to encourage people to walk or cycle, especially to work. Do you have any comments on this?
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. It doesn't matter which city in the world we're looking at. It's impossible to manage that everyone is going around by car. There's not enough space. We don't have the resources in that field. So we need efficient collective transport. Let's call it collective transport. And still, the connector will be also walking. It's pretty clear that not everyone will have an underground station in the building. So in the neighborhoods, we will need that independent from all geographic and climatical conditions. I've been to a number of cities in the world, and walking is the most underestimated mode of travel. It's the cheapest, and so we need more knowledge about it. That's one point. Then it's Bremen was the example in terms of car sharing in the World Expo in Shanghai in 2010. As in the urban best practice area, we had a pavilion to present it, sharing the future. And I was invited also by the Chinese Ministry of Transport to give some training for administration people, how to integrate it in the cities. And you have a lot of transport modes. There's a tuk-tuks, there's a very well-developed taxi system, and so on. So to see that all together, but the point is, the more cars you will have in your city, and even when you optimize the flow, it will come to a certain next bottleneck. And that's why we have to look at all the alternatives to the car, to using a car and to owning a car, bring it together. And partners in that can be the business community, understanding that this is a business case. In Bremen, it's a business case. And we as a city set quality requirements so that we know we want to have certain impacts, and that requires a certain quality level of the service to integrate it all. And another role of the cities is to promote it, to provide stations where the cars are available, very well visible, easy to reach, So that is also kind of promotion. And it's not so easy as it sounds to provide the space at good points. And the last point is really with urban developments, right from the beginning to say this is an option to reduce the number of car parkings necessary in a new development, because that saves money for everybody. But also developers, as soon as they understand the benefits, they will say, oh, we want it. And they will put in a little bit of money into the provision of the service as a good quality, because it's still cheaper than providing all the car parking. Underground parking is so expensive and requires not only the investment, but maintenance. You have to deal with the groundwater level, with air quality management and all that stuff. So to see this in a wider picture, and that's, I know it from our presentation in Shanghai on the expo, it was a new thinking for many people. So new thinking requires promotion and requires people like you from academia, from the business sector, to understand it and to carry the message. And then you have operators in Asia. I mean, it's working well in a number of Asian cities and countries. So just have a look at Singapore. Yeah, it's really the question: how do you integrate it in the wider organization of mobility and transport in the city, and also part of urban development?
Yes, I totally agree with
Excellent.
what Michael has mentioned. I think when we're talking about a smart mobility solution, it's not just on one thing. I think it's a combination of different things. One thing we need to know that we cannot get rid of car, but on the other hand, we do not want to promote everyone using the car. As what Michael said, you just don't have enough space, you just don't have enough money, you just don't have enough good air quality if you want to do that. That is very bad. I remember some of my US colleagues when I working in an US company, they have to drive 2 hours to work. Okay, say two-way, that means 4 hours a day. One sixth of your life spent on car. So that is really not alive. So I think in big cities, I think you have to provide multimodal transport system. For some people, they want to drive, they can still want to drive, but they have to pay. For most of people, you have to provide good public transport. In big cities, I think metro is the solution. I just checked, Shanghai now got 802 kilometers of metro. So you can easily accessible to metro station and then walk to metro station. In some cases, they provide now public bicycle for the last mile to ride to the station, and then you get on the metro and then you go to your destination and then you ride on another bicycle if it's several kilometers away from your station. But if it's within 1 kilometer, I think you can walk. So this is the solution. And then, of course, with all this transport mode, we want to go to the electricity mode. We have recently worked for a couple cities like Manila, like Davao City, Ho Chi Minh City, Siem Reap. They have all these e-BRT, e-bus schemes, all funded by World Bank or Asian Development Bank. So I think this is the government, they know that, okay, we cannot rely on the car. Even for bus, we don't want to have the diesel engine bus. We want to have some e-bus, e-BRT. So I think it seems to me that the consensus here in Southeast Asia, in Asian countries, but the point is the government really don't have enough money. How could they get the funding? Of course, from ADB, World Bank, but then I think something very important is to get the interest of the private sector. And then there's a Ken Yi asked me what specific criteria or standards do private investors consider when evaluating potential projects. Of course, it's the return and risk. High risk, they need high return. Low risk, guarantee constant cash stream. This is something they like. for those really long-term investors, not the quick money. They are not doing speculation, because all this infrastructure they build there, they cannot move away. That means you have to have a stable political environment, good investment policy for the investors, for private sectors. And in fact, for this charging point, I think someone very interested, that is the power company, because the power they generate, they want to have more users. So if they can encourage the promotion of e-vehicles, e-bus, I think they really like to see that happen. I think this is one of the possible investors for the charging point, or they might install it at a discount, because you are a long-term user if you have a charging point. This is one of the possibilities, not the only one, but one of the possibilities. And I even found that some of the petrol company or oil company, they're talking about this, because they have to diversify their risk, because they cannot rely on the gas or petrol anymore. They have to diversify. Anyway, they are doing energy, so there's a new kind of energy mode they wouldn't want to invest if they can have return. This is some of the one or two answers to these questions.
Thanks very much, Professor Chow. We just have a couple more minutes. I know we are running out of time. Maybe we'll just take one more question that is directed to Mr. Michael, and if you could just give us maybe 1-2 minutes in your response. The question from Elvira, it was said, she's wondering about the private financing for Bremen. Could you elaborate on the difficulties you see in attracting the private sector to help finance projects for these cities that are transitioning to a green city? So maybe just very quickly, and then we'll move on to the next poll and then wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, very clearly, the car sharing sector developed from private initiatives. So it's a business case which we support. We want to extend it to areas where it's not yet a business case. That's where we will put in a little bit of money for a limited time as an incentive. We really have to see this as an entire mobility system, and not just saying, okay, we want we want independent developments. As Professor Sam Chow also correctly mentioned, it's all belonging together, and we are all facing the problem. Street space is limited, and we have to reorganize it. We have even to take car space away if we want to promote walking, cycling, or public transport, bus lanes, bus and taxi lanes, all that kind. So to have a mix of incentives and disincentives. And I think that's what we have to give as a clear message to the business sector, to the private sector as well, that they know, okay, where is the future business case, and that they go to invest in that. And this requires a clear political statement. And the experience on the city mobility plan, I will put in the chat later on the link to the English version of our sustainable urban mobility plan. Then you may find some more answers, and feel free to contact me afterwards as well.
Thank you very much, Michael, for that brief response. Because we're running short of time, I just wanted to let all participants know that if there are any questions that you have posed that went unanswered, fret not. We will get written responses from the experts, and we will upload all the Q&A, the question and answers to the Pakuru websites that you will have access to. So we're coming to the end of this webinar. My colleague is going to launch the third and final poll from today. And we would like to ask you what key message you'll be taking away from this webinar. So once again, no right or wrong answers, just your thoughts and your opinion. Great. So we have the responses in. The option with the biggest percentage is that diverse funding and financing mechanisms for funding smart and green mobility projects is the biggest takeaway and the biggest key message that our participants will be taking away from today. So with this, I'd like to thank you all very much, speakers, presenters, experts, participants, for your participation in this webinar. We hope it gives you new ideas and inspires you to delve deeper into these innovative, green, smart solutions for your respective cities. We would also be happy to facilitate future connections and a follow-up discussion if you would like. Just some closing remarks. We will have our next thematic webinar on smart tourism on 5th of March. So we strongly invite you to share this information with your colleagues and other practitioners who may be interested in the smart tourism topic. Just as a reminder, once again, all the resources shared during this webinar will be uploaded online, along with the recording in 4 languages provided today, for which a link will be shared with you via email. So we really appreciate your personal takeaways from today's session as well. If you could please fill out the form that my colleague has just sent through the chat box or through this QR code that's being shown on the screen, that would be really appreciated. And thank you very much for your active participation, and see you soon. Thank you very much.